Hello everyone, Marty Braden here. Welcome to my channel. Once again, I sincerely hope that your curiosity for what Evolution, a Theory in Crisis Part 2 might be about. I hope it's satisfied as you watch it. For those of you who are watching my video for the first time, I begin with a brief explanation of why I started this channel. I think it helps my viewers to appreciate and understand what my videos are about, knowing this. After 2.5 years of research, study, and writing, I finished writing my book's manuscript titled An Atheist Delusion. It's a rebuttal to evolutionary biologist and world-renowned atheist Richard Dawkins' book, The God Delusion. My book was written from my Latter-day Saints perspective on why God exists, and Richard's book covers his arguments for why he believes God does not exist. After I published my book, I decided to make a series of videos that reviews each of my book's chapters, where I cover every argument that Dawkins puts forth as to why he doesn't believe God exists. This video you're watching right now is part 83, wow, I've done that many, can't believe it, of the video series. However, like I did one time before, I decided to go on a tangent and discuss a comment string from one of my videos. Its title is Evolution, a Theory in Crisis, and this is part 2 because it's going back to that video, and the comments that were shared is very interesting. I've been having a back and forth with a viewer whose handle was howlingerjoker. The alert that came to my inbox saying that I had a commenter send me a note. I went back and I read her comments, and after a couple back and forths, I decided to do a short video review on this comment string because it confirms what I've said throughout my book, and that is this. Some scientists and judges now, because it's the court case we're going to talk about, some scientists are so disingenuous and in some cases are big fat liars when it comes to topics such as evolution, intelligent design versus creationism, YEC or Young Earth Creationists, and irreducible complexity, and so forth. Intelligent design. The comment string is a perfect example of what I've said several times. Please note that Jammie is kindly in her responses and exhibits a high degree of intellect, which I so appreciate. In fact, I have never felt any sense of contention in her comments towards me or to the topics that we're having, which is what I have always asked my viewers to do and to be like, is to be non-contentious, be kindly, but share both sides what you feel. And so I am grateful for Jammie taking that route in her comment string. Here is the string. It's just fun. Jammie. Michael Behe made this argument in court in the case of Kitzmiller versus Dover. Every single instant, all in bold, of an irreducibly complex system he brought forward was rebutted, she says, showing that they were not in fact irreducibly complex. In fact, not once, she says, has a system ever been shown to be irreducibly complex. The best arguments they put forward were arguing at systems that had gaps and were not well understood. And yet, each time they have, through further study, they've been shown to have function, they just move to a new system or repeat the same lie. Bacterial flagellum of E. coli, the blood clotting cascade cilia, and the adaptive immune system, literally all of these have been shown to not be irreducibly complex. And now most creationist organizations have accepted that and no longer use them as an argument. This is her still, Jammie still talking. In short, Behe should not be taken seriously and is a known dishonest actor, and his argument of irreducible complexity hinges on hoping the people he is lying to don't do their part in fact-checking his long-debunked nonsense. Irreducible complexity is not a good argument against evolution and is simply not used as a straw man, is simply now used as a straw man issue of attack as to ignore attacking the actual science itself. Well, this is my comment response reply to Jammie. Hi, Jammie. Thanks so much for taking the time to share some of your thoughts on this most interesting topic. I know that you know that we can agree to disagree on some of the points I have made and on those points you are making here in your comments that you've shared with all of us. My response to what you say, which was that every single instance of an irreducibly complex system Behe brought forward was rebutted, showing that they were not in fact irreducibly complex, is that this and my response to it is that it's just not so. That's not the case. The case was titled Kitzmiller versus Dover, as you said, and it took place in December of 2004, and it was the ACLU-PA that used the Dover Area School District on behalf of 11 parents who objected to the recent educational policy that required the teachings of intelligent design in biology classes as an alternative to evolution. Intelligent design, not creationism. I said this was not about irreducible complexity, complexity, and that the plaintiff's side did not debunk any of the supposed examples. I said that I have never read or watched anything that gave irrefutable data and evidence that confirms what you said in your reply when you said every single instance of IC was rebutted. Your statements, as are my statements, are our interpretation of what has been studied and postulated as theories. Behe's book, Darwin's Black Box, a discussion on irreducible complexity, was written back in 1996, and so much has been discovered since then. Here are just a few things I would ask you, Jammie, as well as all the viewers who are reading this string, to consider the following. The I and Irreducible Complexity, Creationism Debunked by DNA Learning Center by Emerson Green, Part 3 of a 7-part series, which Dr. Eugene C. Scott, the presenter, said that there has never been one confirmed example of irreducible complexity or a system in nature. Intelligent design, irreducible complexity, and the I, Dr. Scott criticizes claims by proponents of creation science that the vertebrate I is too complex a mechanism to have evolved by natural selection. Darwin discussed the I in The Origin of the Species and found evidence of a step-by-step process consistent with evolution. Dr. Scott also discusses evidence from computer models that the I could have evolved over a period of 100 million years. Recorded at the Biology of Genomes meeting at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, June 1st of 2009. Biologist Nathan Luntz said, quote, exaptation, E-X-A-P-T-A-T-I-O-N, the process by which nature retools for new function, is the most common mechanism that leads to the false assumption that something is irreducibly complex. But when he and other non-believers in irreducible complexity try to present their case against it, their rebuttals always come in the form of theoretical grounds and not with a presentation of repeatable, predictable data that came from the scientists' experiments, etc. We all know why about that, don't we? I mean, it takes 1 million years to do a test. Yeah, who's a multi-million-year person? That would be a centurion, would it not? Anyhow, they say that its empirical support exists out in the real world with such examples as the panda's thumb, bird's wings, etc. This falls under what the evolutionists call exaptation. They define exaptation as a trait, feature, or structure of an organism or taxonomic group that takes on a function when none previously existed, or that differs from its original function, which have been derived by evolution. And as I said, examples of this are the panda's thumb and bird's wings. Such wings, they say, are an exaptation or an adaptation of using their feathers for mating displays or flight in birds, which evolved feathers originally just to keep them warm. So a trait's function does not necessarily explain its historical origin. Could not the wings, more especially certain feathers of the bird, have dual purposes, I asked, and maybe even multi-purposes, so that they were designed to perform multiple actions of flying, attracting their male counterparts, and even fanning themselves to keep cool? How does exaptation occur? Some biologists say that exaptation is rampant in evolution. Any evolutionary process that involves co-opting a trait for a new function results in an exaptation. This means that all reasonably complex traits are likely to represent a layering of exaptations and adaptations. For an example, consider again the tail feather of a barn swallow. I remember using a butter knife. This is me talking. I remember using a butter knife, or should I say, I remember co-opting a butter knife to remove a screw on a small toy my son needed to fix when I didn't have the needed screwdriver for the task. So, with what has been said about exaptation, is this not an example of exaptation? Did I not just adapt or co-opt it? Did it take millions of years to get the butter knife to be able to use to spread butter? That's what it's purpose. And then natural selection, after several 100,000 more years, it was able to co-opt itself so that it could be used to unscrew screws on my son's toys. Come on, man. Let's think about that. Here is a recent YouTube video titled By Design, Behe, Lennox, and Meyer on the Evidence for a Creator by the Hoover Institution, Irreducible Complexity by John Smith. There are a number of DVD videos you can easily get a hold of from Amazon.com. Some are used and are therefore not expensive, yet in excellent condition. Now, the video segment on irreducible complexity comes from a DVD video called Unlocking the Mystery of Life. Two others are also very informative: Darwin's Dilemma and The Privileged Planet. Also, the men and women interviewed in these videos have some very clear and well presented books. Some of the science involved can be complicated, of course, but there is enough good material out there to hold back the confusion that seems to prevail. Here's another YouTube video titled Amazing Flagellum, Michael Behe and the Revolution of Intelligent Design by Discovery Science. The bacterial flagellum has become an iconic example of the evidence against modern Darwinism theory, as well as the evidence for intelligent design. Stephen Meyer, Scott Minich, which I'll mention later on, and other scientists and scholars explore the facts about this amazing piece of nanotechnology, first made famous by biologist Michael Behe when he coined the phrase irreducible complexity. Revolutionary tells the story of biochemist Michael Behe and the revolution he helped spark with his book Darwin's Black Box, inspiring a new generation of scientists and thinkers who are challenging Darwinian evolution and exploring evidence in nature of intelligent design. Learn about Behe's journey, how those opposed to his ideas tried to kill intelligent design in federal court, and how recent scientific discoveries have vindicated and extended his work. Join the revolution at www.revolutionarybehe.com. The Discovery Science News Channel is the official YouTube channel of Discovery Institute's Center for Science and Culture. The CSC is the institutional hub for scientists, educators, and inquiring minds who think that nature supplies compelling evidence of intelligent design. The CSC supports research, sponsors educational programs, defends free speech, and produces articles, books, and multimedia content. And you can get more information at www.discovery.org, etc. Follow the CSC on Facebook and Twitter, and there's another facebook.com/discoverycsc. Visit other YouTube channels connected to the Center for Science and Cultural Discovery Institute. Lots of things are listed here. You can see it in the comment string. I give all of this to show that we simply have at least two differing interpretations of the same data. Once again, I've said that in my introduction to my book and throughout my book. Interpretation of the same data, period. I choose to go with what appears to be common sense to me, and you, Jammie, of course, have a scientific mindset that drives you to choose the evolution-based theory. There is no irrefutable evidence that debunks IC. There is no proof evidence that debunks IC. Thanks for checking my video out, though. It was great to have you share your perspective. Jammie responded to that. This was not about irreducible complexity, was a comment I made, except the YEC, which is the Young Earth Creationist side, used the argument of irreducible systems and Behe as its representative. So yes, it very much became exactly about that topic, that since the opposition had to argue against their case, they used that. I have never read or watched anything that gave irrefutable data and evidence that confirmed what you imply by stating every single instance of IC was rebutted. That was my sentence. She continues. That was in that court case. Every irreducible system Behe gave to the court as his examples of it were shown to not be irreducibly complex by the opposition. Behe and others have since then claimed many other such systems, and all I have seen thus far have been refuted. This is still Jammie. Besides, last I checked, Behe doesn't even release papers to peer review to show they should be considered irreducibly complex in the first place. Behe still needs to prove his argument to at least be true, so as others can take his claims seriously. This is the same for quite literally every other claim made by any YEC institute in the past decades. You're quoting the scientists and not the actual works is telling. She's scolding me a little bit, but kindly so. I have to assume a context, which is even harder when the entire written work. It could easily be that what we interpret, this is so kindly of Jammie, she says, it could easily be that what we interpret from these writings may be misinterpreted by either of us or dishonestly misquoted by either of us. I would prefer the work be cited instead of the opinions of their field, regardless of the side or the side on each interpretation of the data. Very good, Jammie, very good. Me again. Hello, Jammie. Hello again, Jammie. I so appreciate your perspective on this topic and your interpretation of the Katzmiller versus Dover case. As you say, it could easily be that what we interpret from these writings, writings relating to the subjects that relate to evolution, Young Earth Creationists, YEC, Creationism, Intelligent Design, ID, and Irreducible Complexity, IC, may be misinterpreted by either of us or dishonestly misquoted by us. I know that I am not dishonest, and I get the sense that neither are you, Jammie, and that's a true statement. That's how I honestly feel. I too would prefer the work be cited instead of just stating the opinions of their field regardless of the side. I agree with that, Jammie. I assume the work you are referring to, though, and would prefer to be cited, and that it should and that I should cite in my book and these reviews that I'm doing are what's referred to as scientific peer-reviewed papers. That's what I'm assuming the works are, is those scientific peer-reviewed papers that anybody can go out and research what's been published. In my surprise, I will say this, it may surprise you, Jammie, but I agree with you. The challenge I have with this, Jammie, however, is that Judge Jones the third was not honest, or at the least he was not forthcoming in his final ruling, and that's because he made several mistakes and error in judgments that have since been rebutted, including disallowing peer-reviewed papers and articles and books that were submitted by Dr. Behe, as well as biologist Medic, and that's what I said I was going to mention to you. He's from the University of Idaho State University, Idaho College. I'm unsure of the spelling of his name, who showed that bacterial flagellum was in fact irreducible. So that I don't take a huge amount of space here, I refer you, Jammie, and those who are reading this comment stream to go to www.idthefuture.com/390. Where Dover Was Wrong, a detailed look at the errors of the infamous Kitzmiller decision by Casey Luskin, who is an Associate Director, Center for Science and Culture, another scientist. I would have you focus in on what Luskin says. It's a video podcast. I'd have you focus about 13 minutes in, if you don't want to watch the whole 19-minute thing, but about 13 minutes in, watch it to the end, Mark, in that podcast. This podcast is where Mr. Luskin reviews the multiple errors Judge Jones made in his ruling on the Kitzmiller versus Dover case. He's one of those people who is biased, and by the things that this Mr. Luskin says, you have to go do your own research, but to me, it fits what I've been saying in my book several times. Those who are interested in looking further into what occurred with this case and Judge Jones' ruling, and what he used 90+% of the ruling was the opposing side, the opposing sides that he just cut and pasted basically, and the evidence that was not accepted by Judge Jones, you can go to www.discoveryinstitute.org and do searches at www.discovery.org/p/Behe for Dover Was Wrong. And you just a lot of links there, but you can look at a different article. This is just the one that talks about specifically what Jammie had brought up. You will find a plethora of information as well as references to the work and the papers, quote, the work, the papers mentioned by Mr. Luskin and those scientists he mentions in his short podcast. He talked about several papers that were not accepted. They were peer-reviewed and showed the magazines or places where they were published. It is just too much to put here, and that's why I suggest you go to these sites and read and watch and learn why I have said in my book, An Atheist Delusion, and I'm saying now, is that there are some scientists, not all, some scientists who are, and judges, who are actually lying about evidence, and why they do not allow intelligent design papers be submitted into their peer-review magazines. Jammie, you said you're quoting the scientists and not the actual works is telling, and I understand why you would say this, but you do not understand the why I didn't quote the work/papers and data. It is simply because to do so would take pages upon pages and hours upon hours and watching hours to read the books, watch the videos, read the papers, do the study of the data that is required to meet that standard of, quote, the works, the papers, data. So, go to the links I shared and go to the papers these scientists have prepared and have in fact submitted, just as Mr. Luskin has referred to, and let them speak for themselves. In the end, Jammie, and those who are viewing this, I so appreciate the fact that you are what I call a truth seeker, like myself. However, you have a bias towards the natural, and I have a bias towards the spiritual. But I do think both of us seem to have room for being open-minded enough to hear from the other side and to use our own critical thinking and reasoning as to what is baseless and what has probability of being true. Thanks for sharing your thoughts, Jammie, and continued success to you. So that's the string back and forth. Why I thought I'd do a tangent little review here is to simply express to you, my viewers, that it doesn't always seems to come down to a interpretation of the data. And why? Because historical science is like those folks who go to a case, a murder case, and they try to get the evidence, but they can never do a perfect reenactment and listing in the exactness of what the case of the murder case took place to be able to identify. So they have to assume puzzle pieces and tell a story. Those pieces of data tells a story. And each can have a different, quote, interpretation of what they see the data story being told. And that's what's happening here with irreducible complexity. There is no scientific proof. That's why, if that's not true, then that would be blown out and no one would ever mention it again, and nothing else would be done again in way of scientific study on a past proven falsified theory of irreducible complexity. It's even more intense today, and so is intelligent design today. And on that video by Mr. Luskin, he talks about intelligent design, some very interesting things about intelligent design, that it's not creationism, it is true science, but they call it pseudoscience because they assume, because people who are Christian do this intelligent design research, that it's obviously tied to a faith or to a religion, and it's not. It's tied to a intelligence, to information, to an informed designer of sorts. We don't say who it is or say it was. And that's why intelligent design is most definitely different than creationism. And I would watch that video and others that Mr. Luskin gives that he explains it far better than I'm doing. But I understand the principles he's saying here, and I do feel that it should be two separate sides of the coin presented to our students, and it doesn't have to bring in God, it doesn't have to bring in supernatural, it doesn't have to bring any of that. It has to do with the information of design. The information that's in the DNA of a 4 billion letter word, that's information. Who designed it? Who's the computer programmer? Or what is a computer programmer? It doesn't have to be you, a supernatural God. What is that truth, that causal cause? Science can figure it out, maybe they won't, but it is not creationism. And it's just such an interesting topic that we've got on, and I so appreciate Jammie's willingness to jump in and share her thoughts. Very intelligent, very succinct, and I so appreciate it. I think we should all continue to be open-minded and listen to what the scientists and the experts say on both sides of the coin, both the theists and the non-theists, both the atheists and those that believe in God. They still follow the true principles of science. It's gaining knowledge through experiment, through data, through repeated testing, and those things that we can't test because it takes 1,000,000 years to do it. We have to do an interpretation, and that's what we've been doing. So that's part 2 of this particular video. Evolution, a Theory in Crisis. And thank you, Jammie, for stirring me up a little bit to go and do some more homework and express why I took the interpretation and believe what I believe. And hopefully this is helpful for those of you watching this video. So until next time, comments, thoughts, please do that. Let's continue on with the discussion. But until then, I want to wish you continued success. Goodbye.